What is up, everyone? Today we're going to be talking about the book The Big Short by Michael Lewis. Now, I didn't want to do a video about this book because although I do a lot of book review videos on YouTube, I didn't want to do a video on this one because it was kind of a technical, very niche, a bit of a complicated book, specifically for a business audience. And if you actually read the book, there's a lot of like technical mumbo jumbo about shorting and housing bubble and all this stuff that's most people wouldn't find interesting, most people wouldn't understand. Although, despite it being fairly complicated, I do think that anyone, even if they don't have any background in this, could understand it from reading the book. Having said that, though, it's, like it or not, it's a bit technical and it gets a little bit complicated and the book's pretty thick. However, I just found out that they're doing a movie about The Big Short. It's about to be released and it has an all-star lineup of superstars as the actors behind this movie. From people like Brad Pitt to Ryan Gosling to Steve Carell and on and on and on. It's like an all-star cast. Do I think this movie is a little bit overdone just based off the trailer? A little bit. I mean, let's be honest. Like, every single one of the characters being played is a very well-known A-list actor who's playing that character, to the point where it's just like really like it's one of those things where that I don't like about movies, where rather than casting for an actor who can play the role as well as possible, they just find the most A-list actor because whatever reason. There's a lot of recognition or they already have a following. And, honestly, a lot of these actors are really good, but sometimes they're not exactly the best for that role in that movie. And I think when people understand this well enough, it leads to something amazing happening. Johnny Depp wasn't Johnny Depp until someone believed in him and he did Pirates of the Caribbean. Same thing with Heath Ledger and casting that man for the role of the Joker in the Dark Knight series. And the list goes on and on. Those are examples of people who were cast not because of their star power, but because of the potential that people saw in them. Okay, so anyhow, having said that, who knows? Honestly, a lot of these characters, Brad Pitt, a lot of these people, they were all nobodies at a time, once upon a time anyway. So arguably they do have that skill. Maybe they can still deliver. Maybe not. I don't know. For me, Brad Pitt, he's done a ton of movies already, like a ton. I don't know if he still has that edge anymore. When he first started in the film industry and he did stuff like Fight Club, off the wall, amazing. Nowadays, it's like, I don't know. He's kind of like, you can definitely just be doing movies and not put all your effort into it after doing it for 20, 30 years. I don't know if Will Smith has the same edge as he used to. So that's my whole rant about movies. Let's talk about this book, The Big Short. So this is an amazing book, and basically it is a in-depth account of numerous different people during the 2008-2009 housing crisis and about 7 or 8 years leading up to that. And it accounts the story basically of individuals, different individuals. Sometimes they're semi-linked, sometimes they are not, but it accounts their whole story of how they recognized that there was incredible stupidity going on in the housing market and how this whole thing was about to blow up. And they looked at the numbers, and the numbers really showed that everything was pretty much, going to blow up one day because people were getting loans left and right, and people were pretty much getting credit to buy houses who on no right mind on earth should have gotten credit to buy these houses. People who were making like $10,000, $20,000 a year, somehow they owned like 5 mansions and they just had to pay it off with their mortgage somehow, which they could keep refinancing which was just like retarded. It's like it doesn't make any sense. Now, I don't claim to be an expert at this sort of stuff, but it was interesting for a novice to just like look into this, and I found it really interesting because, in all honesty, the author of the book, he's very, very well known, and he's written a lot of very well known business books, and he's constantly being recommended from everyone I know of, especially people interested in investing, finance, business. They're constantly aware of Michael Lewis's stuff. Now, I've read a few of his books. Have these books actually been of use or impact in terms of helping me in terms of business? Or would I recommend them to help anyone else in terms of business? Almost always no. Like, let's be frank. I've been recommending these books by really well-known people, really well-known entrepreneurs. Love these books. They're their favorite books. They've recommended them. But in all honesty, like, some of these books, like, they will not really help me in business unless I ever get into like macroeconomics, finance, and I'm one of those guys who, like many of these nerds, who again, there's nothing wrong with nerds. I love nerds. I am a nerd, but unless I become one of these nerds who spend like 8 hours a day poring over the finance and looking at the numbers, or looking at macroeconomic stuff, or really stuff like this, I don't think it will really be of use to me. But if you are one of those guys, it could be of tremendous use, because I mean, there's just so many lessons in this, and these are really overarching lessons that I think if you're a billionaire, or you're looking at things from a large level perspective, it could be of great use to you. But if you're a small business person, not so much. Things like just understanding that, like, especially in terms of investing in the stock market and the housing bubble and stuff like that, that when most people are saying this, you are completely fine to disagree and say that you guys are completely wrong, and realize that this happens because most people are stupid and they don't look into the numbers. They're too lazy to, because they're complicated, or they scare people. And that's what a bubble, that's what a bubble is, basically. So basically, let's go back to the movie really quickly. The movie, I'm very sure, will basically illustrate this entire story very simplistically for an audience to understand. And just looking at the trailer, I'm very amazed, and I'm sure the movie would do that justice by very simplifying what's going on in terms of what actually occurred with the housing bubble. And I find this very fascinating. There's been a couple movies done on Michael Lewis's books already, Moneyball, and they've all been very successful. And then there's been The Wolf of Wall Street, which was also, they also simplified exactly what happened in terms of what they actually did. But I just find this incredible, and it's interesting that they're bringing this to the mainstream, and it's working. People are interested enough in this to watch it, to pay for it, and apparently it was a big enough success financially for them to make another one, The Big Short. So that's pretty much what spurred me to do this video. And the biggest thing, if you take nothing else from this video, I do think that if you're ever interested in this sort of finance and all this sort of stuff, or you're just interested in, what occurred that caused the recession of the 2008 and 2009, you have to read this book. And it's such an interesting account of all these different individuals. And the author literally tracked all these people down and researched their entire stories. And the way he tells these stories is just so well done. It's such a masterpiece in terms of intertwining the stories, almost like a work of fiction. But it's not, where he'll start with this character, and then he'll go to another group of individuals who are discovering the same thing, and switch back, and it's all chronological. I mean, I think a lot of great fiction authors and fiction readers would like this too if they ever want to get into nonfiction. And let me tell you, basically, what the story is over the course of 8 years, a bunch of individuals, some of them in a group, some of them by themselves, um, all from different backgrounds. These people are, part of a money managing fund. The others are doing something else. But they all on their own, sometimes together, sometimes, they bump paths and, give each other information and then they go their separate ways. But they all on their own over the course of 8 years, sometimes much earlier, they figure out, you know, this housing bubble is just, it's going to explode. And what struck me the most about this story was that basically these individuals were told by the majority of the people, like hundreds of people, that they completely lost their mind. They had no idea what they were talking about. How everything was fine, and they had the numbers and they had all this stuff, and most of these fools didn't listen. The ones who did listen, some of them just decided, okay, I'm going to secretly, try and bet against the market on the side. And then it led to another big problem, and this is one of the reasons why Warren Buffett, who is a very good money manager, investor, and businessman, it's one of the reasons he and his partner Charlie Munger never really short stocks. He used to as a kid, but the reason why he doesn't do it now is because even if you know the direction that a stock is going, which is in the case of shorting, down. And if you guys don't know what shorting a stock is, it's basically you are betting that a stock will decrease in price in the future. And basically you are buying that stock on loan and then selling it, later when it's dropped in value. And basically, once it's sold at a lower price, you get to pocket that difference because you're actually only having to truly buy at that lower price. It's a bit technical, and again, I don't know too much about it, but I know enough just to tell you, just to illustrate the picture of what's going on here. And it's very interesting because basically the huge problem, and you'll see this in the story, if you ever read the book. I don't know if the movie will ever show this, but a lot of these people, they had to struggle really hard, especially I think his name's Michael Burry. This is a guy who ran his own, hedge fund. And the thing was, based on how it worked, he was so, he was so screwed over because, as Warren Buffett says, even if you know the direction of the stock, you don't know when it will actually drop in value. So it can go up and down, up and down. And in that time, you can be screwed over. Like if it goes up, you're losing a lot of money. So basically what Michael Burry did was he knew that, this whole housing bubble was going to crash. So he bought something that was the equivalent of shorting a stock. Because these weren't stocks that he was shorting. These were housing mortgages. So mortgages are different from stocks. But he did a lot of deep research and found something that was very similar to shorting a stock. The thing was, he didn't know, he knew it was going to happen. He thought it would occur in the next year or the next 2 years. And it ended up taking like 4 or 5 years to do it. So in those 4 or 5 years, he bled out money in his hedge fund. And, he told all of his investors, like, trust me, this thing's going to blow up. It's a huge bubble. Like, it's written all over the place. Like, literally, this whole system's crashing down. It's a complete mess. Everything's going to crap. You can see in the numbers. And because no one's listening, I approached the government, I approached all these people, because no one will believe me, I will bet against it. And once it happens, we will make a lot of money. All of his investors didn't believe him, and he had to deal with so much pain and heartache and hatred from everyone, including his own investors, for 4 or 5 years. And eventually, after that time span, he bled out all this money, and eventually it did occur, and he made a lot of money from it. But he bled out so much of it prior that a lot of his investors hate him. He still made it back many times fold, but I mean that sort of emotional trauma is just like no one believes you, even if you have the numbers in tow, because like it or not, people who invest are just average individuals. They don't understand stocks, they don't understand the stuff, and they don't know any better. And so it was a complete mess, and it's really just incredible. So that's all I gotta say in this video. As always, like and subscribe. I would do a shortened version of this video if you guys want to check that out, which will just summarize the highlights of this longer video.